form of time travel. It's psycho-emotional time travel, but time travel nevertheless. And I thought, I got asked to talk today, I thought I'll do this whole sort of comprehensive treatise about living in the past, and then it turned out this is a much more complex subject than it first seems. And unfortunately for me, it's more complicated than it seems. It's like the subtext for what I'm going to talk about. And certainly is the subtext of the thing that I'm going to present, which is hiding in the corner behind the time tunnel screen. Anyway, so living in the past, what do I mean? Oh, well, wake up. No, it'll come back. Right, so what do I mean by living in the past? Well, what I don't mean is something I saw this summer, which I went to a steam rally with lots of steam engines and people showing these are standing engines, which actually aren't steam-based, they're combustion engines, but they're made in the 20s and 30s. And I think they're being exhibited by people who might not self-describe as geeks, but definitely are, because it's not that the appeal is not that these machines are old, it's that they are visible, you can understand how they work by looking at them, they've got character, they go chug, chug, chug. I mean, what's not to like? And so enthusing about technology like this, I think, isn't living in the past. And nor is this. This is the sort of thing that I get off on, which is electronics. And this wanted to bring along some components that are possibly the only form of electronic component that is solely concerned with dealing with time. Obviously, time impinges on all electronic systems, but there are very few components that solely deal with time, and one of them is a delay line. This is also a delay line of a different sort. What is a delay line? These glass delay lines in the picture were used in analog video predominantly, because you needed to have a 64 microsecond delay as part of the video processing. And they're just cool tech. How they work is cool. What they do is they take the input signal and delay it by a set amount. And it's just nice that you have your electrical signal goes in here, a piezo crystal turns it into an acoustic wave, which then traverses this piece of glass, and it bounces off the internal surfaces. So it goes boing, 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 and then ends up there, and it gets picked up by another piezo crystal and turned back into electricity. And the amount of time it takes to do all this bouncing is exactly 64 microseconds. And it's a simple, beautiful, rather Star Trek bit of kit, which, if one's nerdy enough, one finds really quite appealing. And so here, this is one real size. I don't know if you want to sort of pass that around. Won't be used in anger again, so don't worry if it gets damaged. And the big coil of wire, which is literally nothing other than a big coil of wire, is a delay line from an old analog oscilloscope. And these were used because if you had an event that you wanted to trigger on and then display, the trigger circuit takes a certain amount of time to get its act together. And so how can you display the thing that caused the trigger? Well, you actually delay the whole signal that gets displayed by about 50 nanoseconds. You run it through very high quality coaxial cable before it gets to the deflection systems in the scope. And thus you get to be able to look at the thing that you wanted to see. And it's written about slightly more eloquently on this, but that's on Wikipedia, you can check it out. So these are time-based technologies, but the thing, I'm going to talk about time travel rather than just bits of old machinery. This is another example of living in the past. About a month ago, there was an event in Sussex called Goodwood Revival, where people dress up in the fashions of the 20s, 30s, right through to the 1960s. And so they have vintage clothes, vintage cars, music, sort of the overarching culture. I might say it took me a long time to find images of the Goodwood Revival that didn't look like, which were neither sexist nor looked like a kind of UKIP brochure. But anyway, this is what went on. But I don't think it's, if you look at the ages of the people, none of them were born in, or would have been alive in the periods of time that they're enthusing about. I mean, some of them might have been born in the 1960s, but the only fashions and culture they would have known would have been nappies. And so it's as if they've been told about a world that they find appealing, and they say, I buy into that world. I just want a role play being there. And so what's going on in their heads is almost exactly the same as what's going on in these people's heads. It's the same process, except this is an imagined future time, which may yet take place. Who knows? Let's hope. But the kind of time traveling that I do, it is the one of dubious psycho-emotional health, which is living in the past and nostalgia for one's own past. This might be at any pleasant time in one's life, or any event that one wants to relive, but more often than not, it's deep, distant childhood. And like some people, I decided that I've got to have that thing that I found so entertaining as a 12-year-old, or I have to have that thing that I really enjoyed playing as a 9-year-old. I was slightly worried by a Bible quote, which was, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things for about 35 years, and then I bought them all back on eBay. But the most, I think for me, and speaking very personally, the most important thing in my childhood was television. Not my slippers, I hasten to add. I got this image off the internet, and this is not my life. But anyway, it's the sort of telly that I knew. And there's something that's very important about tellies for me, which is their depth or their fatness. Front of screen to rear of set. Why is that important? Well, just a bit of background. Here's fatness versus time for color televisions, in Europe at least. They were at their fattest when they were introduced in the early 1960s. The front to back, I should have put units on this graph and haven't done, but it's 70 centimeters would be the top, the highest level of fatness. That was defined by tube geometry. You've got the electron gun here, squirts a beam onto a phosphor face. It has to be deflected electromagnetically through an angle, so it actually scans the whole of the screen. And the early drive electronics and tube construction meant that you could only have 90 degrees of deflection, and therefore your tube had to be really long. But as technology improved, 90 degrees became 100 degrees, and then ended up at 120 degrees in the mid-1970s, and this is when tubes were their thinnest. I will explain why I'm going on about this in a minute. Then, continuing with the history lesson, in the mid-1980s, there was a fad for having completely flat square tubes. Anyone of a certain age might remember the Hello Tosh Got a Toshiba adverts, which were sung by Ian Dury in imitation of Alexei Sayle. But to get the tube with a flat screen and sharp corners, they had to start getting long again. So tubes started getting long. And then when widescreen happened, they got really quite long again. And then when LCD and plasma came along, the fatness really fell off a cliff. So why the hell does this matter to me? Well, because if you've got a big fat TV, you can be sure that the rear portion is filled with lovely electronics. And you can imagine the a geekish child with a torch looking through the peepholes, the ventilation holes in the back of a telly, looking at these some colourful components, not knowing what they are, but knowing that they're magical and that they're somehow responsible for the picture that you're viewing. And then there'd be the happy day when the telly went wrong and the repairman would call, and you'd actually have the whole back removed, and you'd see this fantastic world filled with colour and extraordinary things, shapes, and danger as well. You'd have a plentiful warning, pictures of lightning saying, danger, do not open, no user serviceable parts, etc. And now we've got, and of course, one of the most appealing things is if one had a set that was old enough, was the valves. Valves, of course, thermionic devices which light up, and Sinead's bought some here. I have two. And again, the peep show sort of aspect of looking through the ventilation holes of a television and seeing little glowing lights and not knowing what they are, but knowing that they're important and they somehow are responsible for creating the picture. It was very, very profound for me as a kid. But what can you, and there's a picture of a valve through a ventilation hole. But what can you do now when what little ventilation you have on TVs just reveals a green PC board with surface mount tech, which could be absolutely bloody anything from the inside of a computer through to whatever. So the magic is gone. And moreover, flat tellies have tiny weeny speakers. And conspiracy theorists might think, well, manufacturers have made tellies thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and now they're so thin they can't put in proper speakers, and so they then sell you a sound bar for hundreds and hundreds of pounds to try and remedy the situation. And with my nostalgia hat on, I decided I'd try and kill two birds with one stone. I thought, why not get a flat screen telly and get the back off an old telly, a really big back, and construct a valve amplifier, because I'd have lots of valves to look at glowing. It would actually be doing something that wasn't purely cosmetic. It would be solving a problem, i.e. the tinniness of the sound. It could drive real speakers. And those of you who believe in that valve sounds better anyway, that ticks that box. So I got the back of this telly. Then the project became a bit out of control because I thought, I'm going to go for a classic valve amplifier circuit, which was the Mullard Stereo 1010. That means you use 10 valves to produce 10 watts per channel. So quite a lot of valves, quite a lot of electronics, but it's not rocket science as a circuit. And I thought, well, I'll build that into the back of my telly. And then it got more out of control because I thought, well, why not use an actual PC board from an old valve telly? All I have to do is cut through all the printed circuit tracks underneath the valve traces, cut all the circuit tracks underneath the passive components, supplement those passive components with extras where need be, and it's probably about a third of the components necessary already on that board, so I got grinding. That's the rear of the board. So I got grinding. And I thought, oh, there's a 1K resistor. I need that. Grind, grind, grind. Oh, there's a 330K resistor. I need that. Grind, grind, grind. And then something in the back of my mind said, perhaps I better test these components before I start wiring them up. And of course, the 330K resistor had drifted high, as is the wont of very old electronic components. And I thought, well, it's all right. I can make amends. I can check to see whether that 270K resistor has also drifted high. It had. It was about 330K. Yes! So I'll use that one instead. Now, and it was after about 1.5 weekends of doing this, the obvious problem that you will have already spotted arose, which is that I lost the will to live. So the project then began to contract. So no longer was it going to be this Mullard Stereo 1010. it was going to be a single-ended 3-watt valve amplifier. So no one's going to go deaf with that. But nevertheless, much simpler circuit, which unfortunately still ended up looking like that, and like that. And then, again, the will to live bit began to cut in once again. So I decided, well, old tellies were mono. So anyway, eventually finished, and it looked like that. 3 valves are in circuit, all the rest are just glowing away for cosmetic effect. Lest I feel the need to actually turn it into a stereo 1010 with separate valve power supplies so this is its finished form, and its finished form is actually over here. I bought a cheap telly to make it. I thought I wouldn't buy an expensive telly because the fire risk. I really didn't want to get a £800 telly and set fire to it. But anyway, so this is my valve back. Anyone who wants to come up on the stage and have a look at the valves glowing, and I can. So this, well, you can come up later on. But anyway, so this is what's going on inside. This is what it looks like. Yes, that is my home. Oh dear. And so and it does work. I have got a speaker, but I haven't wired it up yet. But I can demonstrate it later. But anyway, this is it, and that was my presentation. Thank you.